Welcome to the Fan Forum, the show where we learn more about Husker Nation one fan at a time by asking them the same four questions. Tonight, I am joined by Shelby Lewis. She's an amateur drummer and imaginary rock star, huge Husker fan. You can find her on Twitter at Husker Shelby, HSKR Shelby. Welcome, Shelby.
Thanks, Honke. It's good to be here. Love the Redcast. Happy to be here with you tonight.
Yeah, we'll have to talk a little bit about your following of the Redcast. I think I've got a story for Rob that he's going to enjoy hearing from you. So it's always great to have different people onto the show that we haven't interacted as much with before, and I think that's great. As we like to say with the Fan Forum, that you could be the next one on the forum, and I'm so happy to have you on here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your Husker fandom, and then we'll get into our four questions.
Sure. Yeah, I live out here in San Francisco. Lived here since 2008, but lived in Omaha and Lincoln most of my life. Was born in Omaha, graduated high school, Omaha Central, in '92, and then made my way down to Lincoln for the next 5 years, I guess. And so I was there for all the good stuff. And when people like to give people a hard time about being stuck in the '90s, they're talking about me pretty much.
Yeah, well, and there are worse times to be stuck in as a Husker fan than in the '90s, because you were just a couple of years ahead of us, and we all were there kind of in that early to mid to late '90s. And to see, I feel bad for the young kids, I'm sure they're tired of us hearing about this, but when you would go game after game after game and never see a home loss, or where every season you felt you had a chance to win the championship if you didn't end up actually winning it, that kind of thing is just it's so hard for, I think, those young fans to comprehend right now. But that's what life was like back then, and it really was the ideal time to be there. And one thing that all Husker fans share is that we all want to get back to that point.
That's right. I mean, I feel like all my heartbreak was in the '80s. Losing to Oklahoma and all those, and then it paid off. So stick in there, fans. If you haven't been around for the wins yet, I started down there in '92. I went to every home game from '92 until I moved out here in '08, and saw a lot of wins. And I actually don't think I ever saw us lose in person until 1998. And I went to a lot of games. I went to all the home games and several away games a year. Maybe we'll get back there for the younger fans.
Well, that's the hope. Well, first, let me give a plug here for a couple of future Fan Forum shows that we're going to be doing. This is the first one of 2023. Next week on Tuesday, January 17th at 8 p.m. Central Time, we'll have Jim in Minnesota, the biased realist Husker superfan. And 2 weeks from now, somebody who's close to you in the southern side of California, Chaz in SoCal. He'll be joining us Wednesday, January 25th at 9 p.m. Never be afraid to look foolish in the pursuit of learning. That is Chaz's saying. And I have taken that to heart. I've never been worried about looking foolish doing any of the things that I do on this show. But let's start off with what the Fan Forum is for people that are new to it. We ask the same four questions to each of our Husker fans on it. Why are you a Husker fan? What is your favorite Husker fan memory? Who are your all-time favorite Huskers? And then how do you think the Huskers will do this next year? Or if it's too early to really prognosticate there, maybe what are your early expectations at the very least? I guess I want to show this first, a Tweets of the Week, and this is what got you and us connected here. Amy Devon, she's an alumni of the Fan Forum. She did one of our shows last year. She said, "This is such a fun show. I feel like sitting around talking with buddies every time I listen." And you responded to her going, "Same. It's a great idea, fun to listen. And I've got some '90s stories to share if I ever make it make it to the bottom of the barrel." Haha. Well, you've made it to the top of the barrel. You're on it. So we're going with question number one right now. Why are you a Husker fan, Shelby?
Why am I a Husker fan? I mean, I guess fate, a little bit. I feel like growing up in the '80s, '70s, and '80s in Nebraska, when you're a kid from Omaha, it was everywhere. Like my parents were Husker fans. My grandpa was a Husker fan. My birthday's at the end of November, so it was, always right around the Oklahoma game. In my baby book, actually, for my first birthday, it was the same day as the Oklahoma game, and my mom wrote a big thing about everything that happened at my birthday party, and then put at the end like, oh, it was great, but we lost to Oklahoma. So it was just on from there. So yeah, we used to go. My grandpa had a really good friend that owned a bar in South Omaha. His name was George Havorka, and he owned Havorka's bar, and we used to go down there and watch the Nebraska games. He was in a polka band, and the polka band would play the fight song, and he would come out from behind the bar every time we'd score a touchdown with a red mop and march around and go out to the front, in front of there was a four-way stop out front, and mop people's windshields, and everybody just thought, oh, she's crazy, but it really just kind of was like, wow, like everybody's really into this thing, and I remember like superstitions and cutting out the opposing roster from the newspaper for the pregame stuff, and you put it in a glass of water and stick it in the freezer. We'd freeze the other team's roster. Just silly stuff, but it was a lot of fun growing up in the 80s, even though we couldn't seem to get over the hump quite yet. Yeah, and I went to my first football game in 1981 on Halloween, October 31st, 1981. Got to watch us beat Kansas, and yeah, I mean, it was what you did when you were a kid, and we used to go to charity basketball games and autograph signings and things like that, and it was just a lot of fun growing up in Nebraska back then. And it was a simpler time too. I'm old, so there wasn't internet and things like that, and a lot of times we would just listen to the games on the radio. Like kids now may not get the wins, but they get to watch every game. So I remember they'd go to a commercial. It'd be like close in the fourth quarter, and that State Farm commercial would come on, and I'd like still get butterflies in my stomach, like hearing the State Farm jingle, just thinking about, oh no, like this next play coming up, it's going to make or break the whole game for us. So yeah, I have a lot of memories of growing up in Omaha, and I didn't, by the time I got to high school though, I really kind of wanted to leave the state for college. I didn't even want to go to Nebraska, which might be a surprise to a lot of my friends. I was going to go to Colorado State, and I actually went to Lincoln to meet with Colorado State. They offered me early admission, and one of their things that they said when we met with them was that they love Nebraska kids because we're the only ones that hate University of Colorado as much as they do. So that made me laugh. Yeah, so they offered me early admission, and we celebrated by going out and getting tickets to the Colorado State game on the street from a scalper. I went in, blew Colorado State out of the water. Calvin Jones went to my high school. He was a few years ahead of me. Scored a couple touchdowns, so that was like super fun. And now I think about that, and I think, like it's all fate. Ended up realizing it just wasn't in the cards for Colorado State. We couldn't afford the out-of-state tuition and all that. Come back around, it's looking like it's Lincoln for me. I wasn't like super excited about it, but it was what it was. I was on my way to college. That was exciting. We went down to Lincoln, and they split up the parents and the students and took us on a tour of the university. We went and hit all the the union, and pointed out all the buildings for classes and things like that. And then the kid that was leading the tour was probably just a few years older than me, but he said, does anybody want to go see the stadium? And I was like, me, and one or two other kids were like, yeah. And so we went over there, and he didn't really know how to get us out on the field. We took us into the South Stadium office there. He was looking around, and he didn't really know what he was doing. And the elevator doors open right in front of us, and Bob Devaney just walks right out in front of us and was like, you kids trying to get out on the field? And he's like, just get on this elevator and go down. And so we get in the elevator, the doors close, and me and this kid look at each other like eyes like this, because I think we were maybe the only two that knew who that was. But yeah, it was just like that kind of like was the moment where things shifted a little bit, and I was like, you know what, I'm pretty excited about coming down here. This is gonna be fun. So and it was fun.
Yeah, all of a sudden going to Nebraska seemed like a pretty cool thing when Bob Devaney's one of the tour guides.
Yeah.
You know, you've made producer Skip very happy. He's a Colorado State grad, and you know, and just absolutely loves it there. So, and he lives out in the Denver area. You know, I have memories of that year. It would have been 1990 or 91. That Colorado State program, and my memory of it is looking at the Rams coaching staff, and Urban Meyer was on the coaching staff, and he had just this tiny little kind of awful, for lack of better words, porn mustache. It was this horrible little mustache that he had, but he was on their coaching staff. He was a young receivers coach maybe for him. I'm thinking maybe that was the position coach that he was, but yeah, he was part of that. You mentioned 1981 being your first year that really remember following it. And we've talked about that with other fans here, is those formative years. For me, it was 1983 was the year. I remember everything from the Penn State game, the kickoff classic, the inaugural one, all the way through the heartbreak at Miami with the 2-point conversion. And I haven't forgotten a season since. And so you remembering 1981, what a great season as well. That's for Husker and Redcasters that don't remember that season as well. It started off, we were 1-2, really hard, maybe one of the toughest non-conference schedules I've ever seen. It was Auburn, Penn State, Iowa, and Florida State. And we were 1-2 playing Auburn. We were down at half. Crowd was booing, and Turner Gill started to play more by about game 4 and everything. And the team turns it around. By the end of the season, there we are playing Clemson for the national championship. And by then, Gill was hurt and Mark Maurer was playing quarterback. But what a season as well. I mean, and what a formative year gets you going. And then I'm sure you remember 1982 then and that season, and it just goes on from there.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, I look at, some of those guys, Roger Craig, I think about a lot. Also feels like fate. He went on to play for the 49ers. And then I was like, I don't really follow the NFL too much anymore, but I was a 49ers fan as a kid. And then here, all these years later, I'm living out here in San Francisco. So just funny how things work out.
Well, you mentioned Roger Craig, and here's some photos that you'd sent me. and we talked beforehand that this is from 2 different events, 2 different years, but the top 2 photos, you with Dave Remington and Roger Craig, that would have been after the 1982 season. And then we have 2/3 of the triplets here of the scoring explosion, Irving Fryer and Mike Rozier. Tell us about these photos and what that was like.
Yeah, so those top 2 photos are at Omaha Northwest High School, I'm pretty sure. They used to have a charity basketball game where some of the former players would come in, and I think they played against like the faculty or something. It was just always a good time. And then afterwards, they'd spread out on the bleachers, and people could come up and get autographs and take pictures with them. So that was always a lot of fun. Just getting to meet those guys that seemed larger than life, and watch them on the TV. And then down below was a little bit later, meeting Irving Fryer and Mike Rozier. That picture with Irving Fryer just makes me laugh every time I see it. But I got to show, actually, I have a autographed copy of the picture with Mike Rozier, and I was much older at that time, and he just got the biggest kick out of that and had to go. I think his girlfriend or his wife was with him, and he like got up from the table and he was like, "That's me," and that's her. So that was a lot of fun to just see him get excited about that picture too.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. Well, let's move on to question number 2, and I may have some photos that they might be what question number 2 is. I don't know. What is your Husker favorite fan memory?
This is such a tough question, Honke. I mean, I've been to so many games. I feel like I've really lived a blessed life as a Husker fan, honestly. Like, given all the stuff that's happened in the last years and, all the heartbreak we've had, prior to that, like, I had so much fun. I've seen so many great games. I was, the Halloween game in 81. I was also at the Halloween game in 92 with Colorado.
Oh.
It was probably my first big Nebraska game, right? Like, I was a freshman in college. That night was amazing. It was a night game. It was Halloween. It was homecoming. It was raining. The weather was crummy. Nobody cared. It was great. That was one of the best games ever. The goalpost came down. I watched them carry the goalposts out, and then somebody knocked the lights off a cop cruiser outside. It was just like chaos, but it was super fun. That was such a great game. And then the road trip to Notre Dame, I made it to that game.
Oh, wow.
That was super fun, like just nonstop hours of Husker fans passing each other on the interstate, honking, and that was great. Those fans wanted us out of there the second that game was over, though. That was surprising. I didn't expect them to be quite so angry with us, but even like as recent as 2015, the Michigan State game, I made it back for that. Like I just remember that being so much fun. I have some videos of that too, where like just nobody would leave. Nobody would leave the stadium. It was like 15, 20 minutes after the game, and it still was a packed house. So, and then even in 2015, later that year, Nebraska played UCLA in the Foster Farms Bowl, which was in Santa Clara, so just south of San Francisco. So that's me and my mom with the real life Herbie Husker just before that game, and yeah, there's the team was in the Bay Area for the week and doing different events. Bay Area Huskers got a table at a luncheon where they sat us with Huskers. We actually got to sit with Drew Brown and Sam Foltz. So that was a pretty good time to be able to spend some time with them.
So you got to sit with Sam Foltz and Drew Brown before the game at a like an alumni event kind of thing then? Is that what they were?
Yeah, it was just like, I think it was like both teams were there and like the coaches spoke, and it was just kind of like a reception luncheon, bowl luncheon type thing downtown in San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah, so, obviously didn't realize what was coming at that time, but, was still, a big fan of both of them. It was a lot of fun to just hang out with them and see all the other players, and just such a merging of my two worlds, having moved out here, and then here come all the Huskers into the Bay Area. So it was kind of just a surreal moment for me to be doing Husker things in Union Square in San Francisco. But
you just mentioned a slew of just top-notch games. I mean, the 92, the Halloween game against Colorado. I remember I went there with my dad. That was a whole day worth of things. That at night they even had a midnight hoops for the basketball team, and we went to a volleyball game afterwards. But the game itself, I mean, the rain, everything, it was just outstanding. I was not at the Notre Dame game, and that would have been amazing. The Sea of Red. I was part of the Sea of Red that joined in Boulder in 2019, where we had 30,000 fans there, and that was amazing. Except we didn't get to walk off the field as victors, the way that you guys in an overtime win, Eric Crouch running it into the end zone. Oh my gosh, that had to be just brutal for Notre Dame fans. And
they were not happy.
To have their stadium overtaken like that. And wow, that's really impressive there. You have one other game here that I got to show, and I'm sure this is high on your list, if not right up there. But you were at the 95 Orange Bowl.
I feel like the answer to the what is your favorite Husker fan memory has got to be can I just pick the whole 94 season? Because it was an amazing time to really be in Lincoln and watch all that happen. I somehow made it to the Miami game. I don't know. I didn't have the money to go. This was the 90s, and they just were sending credit cards to my dorm mailbox pretty much every day. I feel like anytime you went and got books at the bookstore, there were credit card applications in the bag. It's just lots of opportunities to gain credit as a college student. And this is probably not the best way to go about it, but I took a couple of those credit cards and split a trip on a couple of cards, financed my way down to Miami, because I just felt it in my gut that we were going to win that game, and it was going to be the first championship of my lifetime, and I wanted to be there. So made it down there. Yeah, I feel like I blacked out part of the game just because I was so stressed out. I remember at halftime just being beyond stressed and don't even remember the halftime show or nothing. I was just like couldn't believe what was happening. I was so nervous. But yeah, like being there for that was just incredible. And I was pretty much by myself. My one of my friends and her family were also on this trip. It was like a charter plane type tour package, but they were seated. We didn't buy our packages together, so they were seated way on the other side of the stadium.
Oh, geez.
I was in the open end of the Orange Bowl, around Husker fans, but like there were also Miami fans around. And after we finally won, Corey Schlesinger down there at the bottom, I ran over to where the team was walking off the field at the end there, and managed to snap that picture of him. But watching him just rumble into the end zone there in front of me, they're just something you'll never forget.
Yeah, looking at these three photos on the screen for the people that will be listening to the show tomorrow, the audio, we have a photo from up in the stands where you're of the field. You were sitting on the open end, just to the right of the big scoreboard that was in that open end zone there, and then the photo on the bottom right, Corey Schlesinger coming off the field after the game wearing the national championship hat. I can tell you, having watched the game, I was a high school senior at that time at Columbus Scotus, so in the city of Columbus. Dave on the Redcast is a Columbus High alum, so he is a fellow discoverer with Corey Schlesinger, with Tim Carpenter, with a number of guys that were on the team back at that time. That was a real special time. And that game you mentioned, I think this is kind of, it's fun too to talk about this historically now. I think that we have this selective memory sometimes where we're like, oh, we were just so dominating and we were in a dynasty. We didn't know that at that time. And during that game, I felt up until the last second, I've told this to the other guys, I thought we were going to lose the game to the last second, just because it was just until I see it, right? We need to win that title for Osborne. Even that last deep throw that got intercepted, somehow it's going to get tipped up and some Miami guy's going to catch a junk ball and run it for 90 yards. And, it was just, those are the thoughts. And when it finally ended at the end and Tommy, takes the knee for the last time, it's like, oh my gosh, what just happened? We just beat Miami in Miami.
Just couldn't believe it, right? Couldn't believe it. It was, we'd seen it too many times play out in the other way, Mm-hmm. So, people thought I was crazy to like charge this trip down there because they were like, oh, you're just gonna, you're gonna regret this. And I was like, I don't think so. I think this is it, right? This is it. I want to be there. And, having said all of that, like, I don't even know that that's my favorite Husker fan memory because when we got back, I was still in Miami when the team came back. So I missed out on going to, at the Devaney, they had, the team came back and had like the trophy and like my parents got to go down there, but I was still in Florida. So I missed out on that and I didn't get to see any of that. So I was a little bummed about that, but, I wasn't going to trade being there for that. Didn't make it out to 72nd and Dodge like they did and all of my friends did that were back here or back there, I guess. But we got back to school in January, and I still hadn't seen this trophy that we won. So I was wanting to see, I want to see the crystal football. I want to go see this trophy, and so my friends and I, I'm assuming it was probably the first week back to school. We're talking about it, and you could go down to I don't know what it's like at the stadium now, but like in the 90s, I spent a lot of time in that stadium, not just for football games. I'd go over there, we'd go over there and like throw the football around on the field. I had a Nerf football. We used to like go kick it through the uprights and pretend we were like kicking field goals. I used to sit over there and watch practice. And I don't know that any of those things happen anymore, but
yeah, it's a lot tougher now.
Yeah. I remember watching practice and Tom Osborne out there coaching them up and, getting to see all of that stuff. And I love the stadium. Like, it's just like one of my favorite places in the whole world. Like, just being even like an empty stadium is like it's just a magical place. But
Oh yeah, Dave and Boomer used to live up on Charleston Street, just north of over the tracks. And when they lived there, if I was going over their place, we used to cut across Memorial Stadium, just go in the southeast corner and walk across the field, come out the northwest, and just to save time. I mean, you have to think about that now. And of course, there's no way you could do that now.
Yeah, it's nuts. We lived in a blessed time, but yeah. So we were living in the dorms, and we were talking about like we should go over and see, like they must have the trophy out, like in the trophy hallway with all the other trophies. It must be there. Like we should go see if we can find it. So I think we four of us wandered over there. It was a cold January day, and I think must have been like we were going to go over there and look for it and then go to dinner. So late afternoon, there weren't a lot of people around. Got into the stadium, went into where all the trophies were, and we're looking around. Couldn't find it. Obviously, there was like all the other trophies and stuff. So we're standing there looking at the trophies, and I'm like looking at the Outland trophy or something, and look up, and like there's nobody around. There's nobody, and here comes Tom Osborne down the hallway, right? Like walking right towards us. And we're all like, oh my gosh, it's Tom Osborne. So he walks up and he goes, hey girls, how's it going? And we're like, hi coach, like, oh my God, like it's Tom Osborne. And he actually like looked at me and he was like, you thinking about winning one of those one day? And I was like, I don't think that's possible, coach. And he was like, well, you never know. And he's like, can I help you guys find anything? And we were like, oh, my God bless my friend Shauna. Shauna, if you're listening, like, God bless you. She just like never shy, stood up and said, we're looking for the national championship trophy. We were hoping we could see it. And he was like, oh, girls, that's up in my office. And we're like, oh. And he's like, kind of like took a step towards like the South Stadium and was like, well, if you want to go see it. And we were all like, yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. So I'm walking like, it would have been like, past all the All-American portraits and the training table and all that stuff towards the South Stadium, underneath the stadium there. Just walking alongside Tom Osborne in an empty stadium towards those doors that lead out to the field. So we get to the doors, and I'm thinking, well, he's going to like take us up there and show us these trophies. And he was clearly on his way to go jog out on the field. So we get out and he goes, do you know how to get to my office? And I was like, well, yeah. And he's like, just, go up the ramp and go around to the South Stadium. Just go upstairs and tell my secretary I said it was okay. I was like, really? Okay. And he was like, all right, have a good night, girls. And he takes a left and jogs out onto the field to go for his run. And we take a right and go up the ramp out of the stadium, go around to the South offices, go upstairs. His secretary is sitting there. And we said, yeah, we were just talking to coach, and he said that we could go in to see the national championship trophy. And she was like, oh, yeah, just go ahead. We're like, what? Like, okay. So 4 college girls just go into Tom Osborne's office by ourselves, totally empty office. So I'm just like, of course, the one that had to be like, nobody touch anything. Don't touch anything. Because one of my friends was threatening to sit in his desk chair, and like everybody wanted to, he had the trophy was there. It was in the corner on a table that was clearly just used to have the phone on it because the phone was sitting on the floor. The Orange Bowl trophy was in there. He had lots of game balls and baseballs and fishing memorabilia. So I look at the pictures now and they're so blurry and you can barely even make anything out, probably because I was like this, just full of adrenaline. I have a few pictures. They're not great. I wish I had an iPhone back then or, something. I feel like I don't have a lot of great pictures of my time in the 90s going to Nebraska games and doing fun stuff like that. But it was just an incredible experience. It feels like one of those things that just is never going to happen now.
That definitely feels like an all-time memory. And, it's interesting. Redcast Rob he's become a fan the way that he is now later in life. So he doesn't have some of the memories to fall back on the same way. But So in recent years, now he's become part of the show. And then he comes down to Nebraska. And when he comes to the state, he lives in Colorado. Every time he comes here, he's met. One night we ended up partying with a bunch of the former Huskers at a former Husker event, and Mike Rozier and guys like that. He's taken private tours of the football stadium. He's done all these really cool things. That's like, who does that happen to, right? And just listening to you, it's like, yeah, you were taking a tour of the school, and the elevator doors open up and there's Bob Devaney, or you walk into the stadium and there's Tom Osborne. You happen to be at the right place at the right time. And,
Rob and I got to get together, and something incredible will happen if the two of us are in the same place at the same time. Maybe
that's true. Now, you are, in addition to being a big Husker fan, you were telling me you're a big Redcast fan. That's great. One of your favorite memories of that involve, Rob, what's one of your favorite memories of the Redcast?
I was telling you, I think this last year was such an up and down year for everybody, but seeing Rob before the Rutgers game, being in the stadium and just like hearing his excitement and like knowing how I would feel in that kind of a situation, just like I said, I love being in empty stadiums anyway, but like being a little bit behind the scenes and like just watching his excitement to be there, that was a really fun show, I felt like, and I was excited for him.
Yeah, that was so cool. And that's the thing. I give Rob all the credit in the world. That guy, he's not afraid to. He always says, you don't get anything if you don't ask. And he went out and got press passes for that game. He's gotten press passes for other ones. He got us Tom Osborne on the show a year ago, and that memory of sitting here in my basement and there's Osborne on the other end and we're going to go have a conversation. That's one of those bizarre ones. But let's move on to question 3 here. And who are some of your all-time favorite Huskers? You've mentioned several. We've seen photos with you as a young kid with some. I'm curious to hear some of your favorite all-time.
Yeah, I mean, being the '90s kid that I am, I'm probably going to stick with mostly '90s guys here. I mean, those guys that I showed are obviously, always hold a special place for me. But when I'm thinking like pure athleticism, it's everybody says it, but like Tommy Frazier, like watching him close up over those years was just an incredible thing to watch. He was so magical, and you just never knew what was going to happen when he had the ball in his hand. So I mean, if we're going off of just athlete, Tommy Frazier would have to do it. If any of my friends are watching, I'm going to catch hell for this if I don't say it. So I had a crush on Damon Benning in college. So he also always has a soft spot. I have a soft spot for him. But then also just like some of the underdog guys, like the undersized guys, I think of like a Baron Miles and Abdul Muhammad. Those kind of guys, like Baron Miles, he was another one that just like did things that didn't seem possible. He was incredible to watch. And a little bit later, maybe Mike Brown. I remember somebody describing him as a heat-seeking missile. He was just a lot of fun to watch. So, those are some of the guys that I think about when I think about that. But I mean, there's so many. We've seen so many really incredible players come through. But those are the ones that come to mind, I would say.
Yeah, Baron Miles, he's one of those all-time favorites. And I remember him in special teams, how he would block extra points and how he would block the punt against Oklahoma State on a Thursday night on ESPN, where he just basically took the ball right off the punter's foot and scored. And then how he would play coverage against guys that were 7-8 inches taller than him, but he had the huge vertical and he could defend well. I mean, we played in 1993, played at UCLA. They had J.J. Stokes, the eventual first-round receiver, and there's only 2 games that year he didn't catch a touchdown against, and one of them was being covered by Baron Miles. And that Miami game that you went to, Miami, they had 2 or 3 guys that were 6'4", and Baron would just go right up against him. And we joke about feeling old sometimes, but now to know that Baron Miles Jr. is on the team and we're seeing next generation players, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. When I was getting ready to talk to you, I had to go in. I don't have all of my Nebraska stuff here in San Francisco. A lot of my stuff's back home in Omaha, but I found I had a couple of scrapbooks that I had made of like just magazine cut ups and stuff after the seasons of 94 and 95. And there's a picture from a newspaper, I think, of Baron Miles, and he is just like parallel, just like he looks like he's flying like a foot off the ground. It's really incredible. He was so much fun to watch. I really enjoyed being a fan of Baron Miles back in the day. I hope I get to be a fan of Baron Miles Jr. too.
Well, let's talk about Baron Miles Jr. and the team that he's on now. Question number 4, how do you think the Huskers will do this year? There's been a lot of changes since the last time that we've been out there. Last game was Iowa, a great win. Now we have new coaching staff pretty much all in place other than the offensive line coach, Donovan Raiola, is back. Outside of that, it's all new guys there. And now you're starting to see transfer portal, new players coming in. So a lot of changes. Obviously, as we talked about before we went on, the success the last 4, 5, 6 years hasn't been there. But how optimistic are you in the changes that have been made, and how does that make you feel towards next season and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I'm both an optimist and a realist. So, I try not to drink the Kool-Aid, but then I do. So, I'm not going to make any win-loss predictions, but I hope the floor is a bowl game. Like, I really hope that we can at least get to a bowl game this year. Anything else is just going to feel like gravy. I don't know if that's going to happen. Like, I'm not predicting that will happen, but like that's my hope, is that we can at least like get back in that kind of a season to get to a bowl game, have a winning record maybe. I'm excited for a new start, like, and a new O-line, and maybe like an improved O-line. I feel like that really was could have made a big difference last year if we would have had a little bit better O-line play last year. Everybody would look better. And for the last few years, really. I also feel like I feel like the new coaching staff has flexibility of mind, maybe more so than I've seen from the previous staff. They seem to be, at least in the way they talk, that they're willing to adapt to what we have and not try to force things, which I feel like maybe the previous staff was a little more stubborn about what they wanted to do, and tried to force it when it wasn't going to work. So, yeah, I'm excited. Like, it's a new start. I've got my Hill varsity right here on the table with a "We Will Do It." Matt Rule. I'm excited. I'm excited for the Rule. Kick things off, and I hope it starts off with a better way than the Frost years started. I was also at that game, so
the Akron didn't happen game. Yeah. Well, our good friends at Hill Varsity will be happy to hear that. And you can always go to hillvarsity.com/subscribe, use Redcast at checkout, and you can get 10% off your annual subscription. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. You live in San Francisco, you're from the Bay Area, and just last night, Nebraska got a transfer from Stanford, offensive tackle Walter Rouse, and he's one of those guys that along the offensive line where we hope to have better play next season. He's one of those big key cogs in the line trying to make that improvement. And I think if we do have any of the success that we hope, let's start with the floor being, let's get to a bowl game. Let's, as you said, anything above that's gravy. Well, to get to that point, it starts in the trenches. We all know that.
For sure.
And that's one of the things. My motto for the offseason, I'm going to keep kind of pushing this all throughout. It's the race to 6. And I'll never put a ceiling on the program. I'm not going to sit here and say we can't win 8, 9, 10, whatever. But the race is to get to 6. And if it takes us 6 weeks and we're 6-0, awesome. And if we're sitting at 5-6 hosting Iowa next year, then get to 6. Find a way. Let's find a way to get to that bowl game. I think that really that's a tangible sign of progress that we haven't done in 6 years. That if Coach Rule can do that, I think it's important for him too. If he can do that in year 1, no matter no matter what it takes 6 weeks or it takes 12 weeks or anywhere in between, boy, that would be a big sign. That would be a really big sign of that progress.
I'm with you. Like, I feel like, it doesn't sound like much, but when we've been where we've been for so long, like, I feel like he'd really have the fan base behind him, even just to get to that point. in year
Okay,
one.
I have a question for you, Shelby. You've been to so many cool games and great games and games that meant a lot on a national level, national championship games. But would you go to that bowl game next year, no matter where it is? Would you go out of your way, even if it's just the pinstripe bowl, between 6 teams? Like, wouldn't Husker Nation just travel like mad to go wherever this team was going to make it for their first bowl back?
I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that like Nebraska fans would show up in big numbers if we made it to a bowl game next year. I have no doubt. I've been a season ticket holder since 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I've lived in San Francisco since 2008, I've never given it up. I get back for at least one game every year. I would go to a bowl game. I mean, wouldn't that be a blast to go to a bowl game?
Oh gosh, yes. Oh my, it would be amazing. And Husker Amy, who's I know she's watching live right now. She was commenting earlier. She lives out in Montana. Same thing. She's had season tickets, and yeah, you could, you can't make it back for every game, and you could give it up. But no, you keep those season tickets, and you're ready to go again. And we, if nothing else, gosh, Amy, you're following along here. If you remember what you wrote one time, you wrote something about like Husker fans were made of the bounciest substance in the world. Something, like anything can happen to us. You can get knocked down and you can have a losing season and we go in the dumps for a couple of weeks. We do that on the Redcast all the time. After a couple of bad losses, I mean, it's like, don't talk to me for about 3 weeks, but then all of a sudden, boom, we bounce back and there we are, and here's Amy saying, just like, see you at the bowl game, Shelly. Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah, I will. I'll be there.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. We keep bouncing back. It's tough. The losses have never gotten easier. And even when we'd barely experience a loss. I mean, when we lost Arizona State in 96, the first time in 25 games, I just remember it broke me. And I was like, this is horrible. And how can this ever happen? And, blah, blah, blah. I feel the same way still today. It just happens more often, but that feeling's still there. I'm not a good loser that way.
No, me neither. I mean, I think about, going to that Miami game, the Orange Bowl, and, I feel like nobody thought we were going to win. Like, mm-hmm. I thought we were going to win, but like still the back of my mind was the year before where we had just had that heartbreaking loss to Florida State. And like, that broke me that year. I remember like being on the couch for like a week, just like, oh God, it was so heartbreaking thinking that was the year. But yeah, like Husker fans, we bounced back. Everybody's still gonna be down there. Come fall, we're all gonna fill the stadium again. We're gonna get behind Rule, and yeah, we're just gonna do it all over again.
Yeah, I think
glutton for punishment, I guess. I don't know.
Well, and I love we've had too much experience with this, unfortunately, but I do like it when a new coaching staff comes in. They're brand new. They don't really have a lot of experience with the Nebraska culture and what the fan base is like. And when you see their eyes get big, and actually we won't even have to wait for it for August and September, just the spring game, when 70 and 80,000 people show up, these eyes of these coaches, and new players, someone that's new to the program, where they're like, what in the world? This is a practice and you guys are selling this out, or whatever it is. Husker Nation, the passion hasn't died off, even with the success dropping. And at times I'm prouder to be a Husker fan today than I ever have been before, because I used to think this back in college where, yeah, we sell out every game, but we win every game. So, that kind of that bravado. And right now, I mean, we're not afforded that bravado. We're the only school in the country not to have made a bowl in 6 seasons and all these things. And you go on Twitter and you kind of get beat down a little bit. And yet, so if you can make it through all that and you can still be this passionate fan base that we are, that means that nothing can break us. There's no loss there's nothing that I'm ever that can happen where I'm just going to say, okay, well, here's my card. My Husker card. I'm done. See ya. It just isn't going to happen. We're fans through thick and thin.
I've always said and thought the most important day to wear your Nebraska gear is the day after we lose. So the day after a loss, you will not see me like wearing black, or if it is black, it's going to be a black shirt T-shirt because I'm still going to support my team. There's
Mm-hmm.
this flag behind me here. I hang it in the window in front of my house here in San Francisco every game day, and win or lose. So
Mm-hmm.
I just hope there's more wins coming.
Yeah, that Florida State game, the '94 Orange Bowl, that was a Saturday night, and I was wearing my Calvin Jones number 44 jersey at my grandparents' house watching it. Game gets done, and I was so proud of how we didn't win. We lose 18-16, but we were 17.5 point underdogs, all that, and just played an unbelievable game. And so, being the good Catholic boy that I was, I went to midnight mass and I didn't take the jersey off. And Mac on the show, he and I were at midnight mass together. We get done. We end up going over to Hardee's in Columbus, staying up till 3 a.m, eating cheeseburgers and doing all kinds of healthy things like that. And we just started talking about the football team the next season. And it was like one of those first moments in my life as a fan where I really started paying attention to, well, who's coming back? Okay, our left tackle is going to be here, and here's the right guard, and let's start writing it down on paper. Oh gosh, yeah, this is the fullback. Okay, this is this guy. I'd never really fanned that way before. And Mac and I started doing that, and that just became our thing. And the next thing I know, every offseason we've been doing it. And 30 years later, we're doing a silly little show and talking to people all across the country doing it. And so, those are the things. And I really hope for those young fans that haven't experienced the success yet. I still hope that they have experienced their moments that make them 20 years from now look back and go, "Oh, that's why I'm a Husker fan." It doesn't always have to be a big win. It just has to be something. There are things that happen, fan days, and you can go down the whole list, just neat moments. Maybe they can bump into Tom Osborne walking around a stadium, things like that. I think that's the stuff that unites us all as Husker fans. We all have our moments.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't know what it's like for kids growing up today if they're like as into it. Yeah, when I was a kid, it was everywhere. Like you go into the grocery store, if the game was on, we'd be still coming out of the speakers if you weren't watching it on TV that week, or it was just everywhere. I don't know what it's like for kids in Nebraska now if they are so. I feel like kids have a lot of opportunity with the internet and everything, and so many games on TV to be fans of other teams. But I'm sure that like it's still passed on from generation to generation, the stories and pictures and memories. And I've got all my grandpa's ticket stubs and all of my ticket stubs, and those kinds of things. That's what's in Nebraska fans to be passed down, is just all those memories and stories. And I'm sure when it comes back around again and we're winning more than we're losing, that those kids are going to get on board too.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing, and I'll end on my end here. I coached youth football in Lincoln for about 15 years over the course of 20 years, so it was off and on a little bit. And when I started in the late 90s, 90%, 95% of the kids on my team, if they took their pads off at practice, they're wearing a Husker shirt of some kind underneath. And then, somewhere along the mid 2000s, you start seeing some Texas shirts, and Oregon gets in there. And then, another 5 years, there was more. And by the time I was getting done, maybe 25% of the team is wearing that. They're wearing football shirts. They're wearing other teams. So they love the sport still, but they kind of lost some of that, maybe that in-state thing. I think Coach Frost, credit goes to, I think he tried to bring some of that back in state. And I think you saw some of that. And I really like the early signs with Coach Rule. I was at the basketball game against Purdue when he came and spoke at halftime, and he is the son of a preacher man, and oh my goodness, he gets up there and starts preaching. But he was like, we're going to have every 13 and 14-year-old boy in the state of Nebraska is going to want to put on shoulder pads and play for us. And that's more red meat for me than even the fullback and the huddle talk. It is important to me. It's our duty, our responsibility as this generation of fans is to keep handing it down and down, and it'll always be there if we can do that. So that's my parting shot. What we always do on the show is we always make sure that our guest has a parting shot. And Shelby, I want to just thank you for taking some time out of your day to be with us, because this is a lot of fun. I love talking with Husker fans. You were not bottom of the barrel. In fact, you moved right to the top, because I love talking with people that want to talk Husker football. And so this has been a blast for me. Shelby, take us out of here. Give us some parting shots. What are your thoughts?
Well, I appreciate talking to you too. It's like fun to talk a little Husker football in the off season, and it's getting me excited already for fall and the spring game, and just to see what's coming for us, and watching all these recruits and these transfers come in. I'm going to be sitting down, like you said, and so who's coming back next year? Doing my research on who are these new guys. So I'm excited. I hope everybody else is excited. Don't lose faith, fans. You never know when it's coming back around.
Absolutely. And when you do come back for a game, reach out to us. You know where we are on Twitter. And it'd be great to have a beer with you. It'd be great at some point. I'd love to get maybe a little reunion of like all the fan formers over time. This is my goal of this fan forum is right now. I think we're somewhere around 12 or 13 of these that we've done. We have a couple more scheduled, but over the course of for however long we're going to do this, I mean, how cool would it be 5 years from now to look back and we have hundreds of stories told from hundreds of fans all across the country, all different generations, everything, that's the ideal, the goal long-term here. And so I'm so blessed and glad that you were able to be one part of that. This really is going to be story by story, fan by fan. That's what the forum is all about. And again, Shelby, I really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you. It's a great concept, and lots of Husker fans have lots of Husker stories, and I want to hear them too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, until next time, just remember, you too can join us on the forum.
A Herd at Sports Network production.